Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Take Your Shot podcast. On today's episode, we react to and preview the in-season tournament, plus discuss why the 76ers are off to a slow start. That's all coming up and more on today's episode of the Take Your Shot podcast. Welcome to the podcast. I hope everyone had an amazing week, and the NBA season is at that point where we are starting the in-season tournament, the second edition of the Emirates NBA Cup, newly named Emirates NBA Cup. Last year, it was just called the NBA Cup. But we are going to preview, react, discuss all about the in-season tournament, plus everything that's happening in the NBA these past couple of weeks. And we will start with the in-season tournament, as we will recap the in-season tournament games that happened this Tuesday, because they were electrifying. They were great, and they were amazingly shocking to start this edition of the NBA Cup. And we will start with the Atlanta Hawks getting probably the biggest surprise win of the night, as they defeated the Atlanta Hawks 117-116. And that was without Trae Young. Getting their first win in East Group C, Dyson Daniels led the way for the Hawks with 26 points, as in surprising fashion, a team that we thought would cruise through East Group C in the Boston Celtics has already fallen to 0-1. And this is a little bit of a wake-up call for the Boston Celtics right here and right now, and I will tell you why. You're a repeating champion, once again. As you know, with the champion, you are no longer the ones hunting. Everyone now is hunting you. You are not hunting. They are hunting you. You are the hunted. Every other team is going to want to beat you, and they are going to give it their all against the Celtics every single night, night in and night out. And last year, we saw the Boston Celtics struggle with the Atlanta Hawks. Remember with DeJounte Murray last year, 2 games in Atlanta back-to-back, and the Hawks beat the Celtics 2 times in a row, and then we got a little bit concerned about them, and obviously they would cruise through the NBA championship. But the Atlanta Hawks have given the Boston Celtics some problems early on this season and in the past. So this really may be something to look out for. Maybe Atlanta just has Boston's number. Maybe a high-powered offense like the Hawks can really beat a team like the Boston Celtics. I don't know what the formula is, but the Hawks, for some reason, have been beating the Celtics as of past. Remember in 2023 as well, when the Atlanta Hawks got the 7th seed after beating Miami in the 7-8 playing game, they beat the Celtics twice. They forced it to a 6-game series, which was surprising as well. But this result, without Trae Young, obviously DeJounte Murray got with New Orleans, this was just an absolute shocker. And now East Group C is really up for the grabs now. Of course, the Cavaliers, who we'll get to in a little bit, 13-0, doing absolutely incredible things, is probably now going to be the favorite to win this group. Of course, Cleveland does have to go to Boston and win that game, but Atlanta, they get Cleveland at home. And the other teams in the group, the Wizards and the Bulls, are beatable opponents. This group now, East Group C, can get very interesting. And this is what we love about the in-season tournament right here with this particular game. Anything can happen. It is a regular season game, which is why it is so beautiful to see a team that we thought would cruise by East Group C already down in the first game. The next game that happened, the Orlando Magic in East Group A, they took care of the business against the Charlotte Hornets, 114-89. Not really a lot to discuss here. Of course, Paolo Banchero continues to remain out. Charlotte not really doing so well to start the season off with new head coach Charles Lee, as the Hornets are, I think, 4-7. Yes, 4-7. That is their accurate record. So not doing too great with Charles Lee, and Charlotte's probably not going to win that group anyway, and it will probably come down to, of course, the Orlando Magic and what was going to be the winner of the New York Knicks and Philadelphia 76ers, which ended up being the New York Knicks on Tuesday night, 111-99, with Josh Hart getting a triple-double, 14 points, 12 assists, 10 rebounds. It might have been 12 rebounds, 10 assists, but Josh Hart getting a triple-double. Joel Embiid's first game back, all the hype around that. Joel Embiid and Paul George playing together for the first time. Of course, Tyrese Maxey continues to be out with his hamstring injury for at least another week, if not more. So Maxey wasn't in the game, but the Knicks really needed the win because the Knicks have not gotten off to, let's say, the strongest start this season. They were 5-5 going into that 76ers game. And actually, it might have been 4-5, and now they end up they're 5-6 right now. But when they played the Philadelphia 76ers, they were 4-5. They really needed a win against a high-quality team, a team that you beat in the playoffs last year, a team that you beat in that arena in Wells Fargo Center twice last year in the postseason. The Knicks really needed that to get some momentum going this season because it hasn't been pretty, and they got it done. And, of course, it's going to be an adjustment with Karl-Anthony Towns, even though he's had some amazing games for the New York Knicks. I remember a game against Miami where he had at least 40 points, where he single-handedly carried them to a win in that one. In this game, it was really a combination of everyone, and that's what you want to see if you're a New York Knicks fan. You don't want to see Jalen Brunson like last year carrying all the load. You don't want to even see Karl-Anthony Towns carrying the load like he did in the win against Miami. You want to see the collective balance with this Knicks team, and that's exactly what happened. All the starters plus Miles McBride scored 14 or more, nothing more than 25 points. That is complete balance. Like Anunoby had 24, Cat had 21, Brunson had 18, Miles McBride had 15, Mikal Bridges had 14. There is balance, there is collectivity, there is camaraderie with that team in this particular game, and that's what you want to see out of the contending teams. Again, Brunson got ran to the ground last year. He ran out of juice. He ran out of energy. He got hurt. That's what happens when you're putting all the responsibility on one player to say, take us there, Jalen Brunson. There's a million other examples of this, but of course it's the New York Knicks, so it's going to be obviously more national spotlight. So the fact that we saw a performance like this from the New York Knicks, it's a good sign. Of course, they did lose in a shocking fashion at the Chicago Bulls after they looked like they were about to come back the other night, and they lost 124-123 in the Garden. So, of course, not everything is still back to normal with the Knicks and not looking like it's supposed to. But that game against the 76ers is what we expect to see from the New York Knicks. Game in and game out, especially with a team like this where you gave up 5 first-round picks to have Mikal Bridges contribute. You gave up Dante DiVincenzo, Randall, and more for Karl-Anthony Towns to contribute. You need to see that balance, or else this team is not going to win and is not going to contend in the Eastern Conference or for an NBA championship. The 76ers we'll get into a little bit later, but I want to move on to the next game, which is the Milwaukee Bucks as they beat the Toronto Raptors 99-85. Doc Rivers and the Bucks only getting their third win of the season, but it is not surprising as the Toronto Raptors currently hold the worst record in the league now at 2-10, only team with double-digit losses so far through 12 games. So that's not a surprise, but the fact that Milwaukee is 4-8, actually they did get their fourth win of the season. I think they're 4-8 now. Their third win was against Toronto, and they beat Detroit the other night to get their fourth win. So that's not really the ideal start you want for Milwaukee. Of course, Doc Rivers getting a lot of attention here. Could he be on the hot seat soon? We'll have to see. Of course, it's just the start of the NBA season. The Bucks can recover, but they really need something to spark them. Maybe an in-season tournament run can be that. Remember, they did make it to Vegas last year in the semifinals before losing to the Pacers. And with Miami already losing to the Detroit Pistons, it really opens the door for them now to win this group, especially with getting Indiana at home. The next game is the Phoenix Suns as they beat the Utah Jazz 120-112. Not a lot to talk about here. Also, Kevin Durant out, as you know. Phoenix off to a very hot start. They are currently 9-3. They're third in the Western Conference right now. No surprise they beat the Utah Jazz. Utah very struggling a lot this season. We'll see if something happens with them at the trade deadline, but not surprised the Suns took that win right there. And the last game, before we get into some headliners, the Minnesota Timberwolves got upset by the Portland Trail Blazers in West Group A. Now, most people would have probably looked at West Group A and say, okay, we've got the Kings, the Clippers, the Rockets, and the Blazers. The Timberwolves should take care of this, right? And then they lose to the worst team in this group, a team that I think is going to finish worst in the Western Conference, in the Portland Trail Blazers. It's just not a good look. It's really not a good look if you're the Minnesota Timberwolves, considering that you have struggled very early this season at 6-6. Of course, there's going to have to be some leeway with the adjustment period for Randall DiVincenzo, the rest of the team getting acclimated to them. But this Timberwolves team that I saw last year, that I saw make the Western Conference Finals, that I saw beat the defending NBA champions and the Denver Nuggets in their house in a Game 7 after being down 20 points. This is not the same Timberwolves team that I've seen. And this is not the same Knicks team as well from the other side of the trade. I mean, both of these teams from the trade have just not started off well. Minnesota lost to Portland, as I just mentioned, in the in-season tournament. They also had another really bad loss against Miami without Jimmy Butler at home after being up late, and then that Miami got a game winner with 1 second left. I mean, Minnesota has just not looked good to start the season, and of course, as it's the beginning of the season. But these are just some concerns we're noting right now because Minnesota, with Anthony Edwards on the horizon, Anthony Edwards entering his prime, there are high expectations, and there is a window for the Timberwolves. I know Anthony Edwards right now, he's trying to open up his game a little bit, trying to rely more on the three-point shot to maximize the scoring rather than the tough mid-range jump shots that he normally takes. But he's shot amazing from three so far to start this season, but it's sort of taken a dip a little bit now. So I think Anthony Edwards just doesn't really need to worry about the analytics. I think he just needs to go out there, play his game, be himself, because that's how the Timberwolves won last year, and the Timberwolves really need to win some games starting right now this year. And for the Portland Trail Blazers, it was a good win for them. Of course, struggling rebuilding team at 5-8. We'll look to see if they surprised some people this season. Don't expect a lot, but it was a good upset win for them there. Now I want to get into the headliners because this is something that I'm about to show you right now that I don't think I've ever seen in an NBA game in my life. Erik Spoelstra, right? Head coach of the Miami Heat. My opinion, most people's opinion, right now, the best head coach in the NBA. And as a Heat fan, oh my God, this was pain cubed. Because what transpired at the end of this game, I've seen it in college basketball before, but in the NBA, I have never seen anything like it. Scenario is Miami's up 121 to 119. There's 2 seconds left in overtime. Miami is about to win the basketball game. This is the in-season tournament game they had East Group B against Detroit Pistons in the Motor City. Detroit, in overtime with 2 seconds left, gets a wide open alley-oop dunk to Jalen Duren to tie the game, 121 to 121. No, so what's going to happen? We're going to go to overtime, double overtime, right? Erik Spoelstra calls a timeout. But the problem was he didn't have a timeout. Erik Spoelstra called an excessive timeout, which gave the Pistons a technical free throw to give them the lead, and they got the basketball back. And Miami ended up losing. The Pistons scored 4 points in 2 seconds without Miami getting the ball back. Just to sum up how a season has gone for the Heat, I mean, you could say it like that. It's been really painful for the Miami Heat. And I think Erik Spoelstra just felt the emotion. He really felt it. He almost cried at the post-game presser. He was about to cry. He was shedding tears. This was a very, very bad look. Not for Erik Spoelstra, just for the Miami Heat. You really needed a win like this. You needed an in-season tournament win. I actually picked the Heat, non-biased, to win this group because of their favorable schedule, because they get Milwaukee at home. And then their one big win will have to be at Indiana, which will happen tonight. And if they don't win that, of course, obviously they're going to be eliminated from group contention. But I thought Miami had a good shot to win the group. And considering their early season struggles, Jimmy Butler getting yet another ankle injury, I felt like they needed this one against Detroit. And they were down 9 with 1 minute and 30 seconds to go. And then Tyler Hero goes full Tracy McGrady mode, scoring 9 points in 50 seconds. I mean, Tyler Hero, you've got to give a lot of credit to, because personally, I wasn't the biggest fan of Tyler Hero. I thought it was just all offense. not elite offense, good offense, and not really a lot of defense. But Tyler Hero turned his good offense into elite shot making and elite playmaking, which is something I saw a little bit last year in game 2 of the Celtics series where Miami did go into Boston and get their one win of the postseason. I saw it a little bit in that game, and it is really translated into this year. Tyler Hero right now, despite Miami's 4-6 record, he looks like an all-star player this year. He has been the best player on Miami's roster. It's not been Bam, definitely not been Jimmy. It has been Tyler Hero. And you got to give a lot of credit to him because I've been wrong. But Miami has still struggled, so they do need to figure things out. And that Erik Spoelstra play really sums it up. It's been a lot of pain, a lot of frustrating moments for the Heat, and they really need to fix it because this team, I just don't know what direction they're going. And the question is, are you going to trade Jimmy Butler? That's the big question on everyone's mind. Or maybe since Hero now playing great, value going up a little bit, do you trade him when his value's higher than it's normally been? Those are the questions Miami's going to have to answer because I said it, everyone said it. It's not just me. This team cannot be in the middle. There is going to have to be a move made for Pat Riley in this organization. The question is, what exactly is that move? We do not know, but Erik Spoelstra made a terrible mistake. It's not his fault. He's a great coach. They'll recover from it. But it's been very shaky once again to start the season for the Miami Heat. And for Detroit, give some credit for the win for the Pistons. I mean, Detroit, for how bad they were last season, they've been decent to start this season. If it wasn't for Ron Holland missing 2 free throws in a row, they would be 6-7 right now. The Pistons haven't been that bad to start the season. They're currently 5-8, but they've been impressing me. And one of my favorite bets this year was to take the Pistons over. And so far, they have been delivering on that already with their 25.5 season win total. They are already at 5 wins. I like what they're doing. I like the culture that JB Bickerstaff is getting there. I liked the addition of Malik Beasley because he's playing amazing so far. Tim Hardaway Jr. was also playing great, but he unfortunately had some kind of concussion, got hit on the head a lot, had to go to the hospital, so prayers up for Tim Hardaway Jr. But the Pistons have really impressed me so far to start off this season, so props to them. And this, I just wanted to share this on the podcast because I never really have seen an NBA team lose because of an excessive timeout. I've seen a tie. I've seen a technical being given up that's not really affected the outcome, but this affected the outcome. Like this could have went to double overtime. Miami could have won, but instead the excessive timeout happened because Spoelstra was frustrated at the Heat, and it really just sums up their season. But I want to move on to the Golden State Warriors and the Dallas Mavericks in-season tournament game, as we all know the significance of it. Klay Thompson returning to the Bay for the first time since he signed with the Dallas Mavericks. And this was really a special one, and the game really reflected what the moment meant because it was a classic. It was 120-117. The Golden State Warriors continue their surprising hot start to the NBA season, improving their record to 9-2, defeating the Dallas Mavericks 120-117, as I mentioned earlier. Steph Curry had 31 points, hitting the dagger three-point shot. But I really don't want to talk about the game as much, even though Dallas has not had the ideal start. If I'm not mistaken, they are 5-7, which obviously concerns there for the Dallas Mavericks. But I don't really want to talk about them right now. I want to talk about Klay Thompson and what he really meant for that Golden State Warriors organization, because I really didn't do it that much this offseason, and I didn't really make it as big of a deal as it should have been because Klay Thompson, he's a 4-time NBA champion. You don't say the Splash Brothers without Klay Thompson. It's Curry and Thompson. That was their team. Of course, Draymond Green, a part of that. But when you thought of the Golden State Warriors, you thought of course, Steph Curry, and then you thought of Klay Thompson. Maybe Kevin Durant, of course, but the 4 championships, the way those two were on the court together, hitting 3 after 3, changing the game of basketball as a NBA duo, having all-star appearances, having iconic playoff performances, including Klay Thompson. Of course, his game 6 against the Oklahoma City Thunder after they were down 3-1, they were down 3-2 in that game, had an amazing game 6, scoring 42 points to help the Warriors come back in that game and force a game 7. Of course, they would ultimately win the series, lose the finals after they were up 3-1 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. But one of those iconic playoff performances you could never forget was Klay Thompson, Game 6, 2016 against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And what he meant to that organization was a lot. And of course, there was a lot of tension going down between the two sides. Klay Thompson, of course, wanted more money for what he did. And obviously, that is a fair argument. Winning 4 titles with any organization is something that not a lot of players can say that they have done with an organization. But the Warriors, Klay Thompson had the injuries. He had the Achilles injury. He had the ACL injury. He just hasn't really looked the same since he had those injuries in 2019. He just hasn't. It's straight up like the God honest truth. But at the end of the day, he has done a lot for that organization. So there was really that argument. Of course, the whole general manager changed with Bob Myers leaving to go to ESPN NBA Countdown, and they have Mike Dunleavy Jr. take over the Warriors. There was a lot of decisions to be made. And the Warriors made the choice of not giving Klay what he wanted, and Klay Thompson signed with the Dallas Mavericks. It's a very sad yet humbling feeling to see him back there, because you really felt like he could have been there for his entire career with Steph Curry retiring at the same time. Of course, stuff goes down because it's the NBA, but you see the crowd wear the captain hats. You see the crowd embrace him. No boos at all, which obviously there wouldn't be any, no matter what the beef happened at the end. To see him smiling, walking down the tunnel, seeing the staff members clapping at him, that is the joy, that is the beauty of the NBA, the beauty of basketball. And it's just one of those moments, man, because really, the tens of NBA basketball, 2010 to even 2022, the team you think of, maybe the Heat, but more likely than not, the Golden State Warriors. This era of basketball was dominated by the Golden State Warriors. Of course, the Warriors right now are off to a shocking 9-3 start, but the real era, like the time I grew up as a child, it was the Warriors' time, man. It was all Golden State. And you've got to give a lot of damn credit to Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, not separately as individuals, as a duo, as Splash Brothers, to why the game has changed. The three-point shot has evolved. Basketball has gotten more popular. Kids buying more jerseys, saying Curry, saying Thompson after they shoot the basketball. That's because of those two. And it was just one of those moments that you just really couldn't frown. You just put a smile on your face when you saw Klay Thompson back in that arena. And it was great to see. But back to the basketball now. Mavericks off to a very slow start, 5-7. But I want to talk about the Warriors. I talked about them last episode, but they are continuing to surprise the league. And 9-2 is something that should not be taken lightly. That is not a anomaly, because they went into Boston and beat the Celtics. They have beaten quality opponents to start the season, and Buddy Hield, who has essentially replaced Klay Thompson, now the Splash Buddies with Steph and Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield has had the season of his career. I mean, Kuminga has been great. Andrew Wiggins, someone who's dealt with a lot of personal issues the past couple of years, he has been phenomenal as well. It's been a collective effort from this Golden State Warriors team, whether that was those guys that I just mentioned stepping up. Don't forget about Jonathan Kuminga. He's been having a solid year as well. This Warriors team is deep. I know DeAnthony Melton, prayers up to him. He had a ACL injury, and he will most likely be out for a while. But this team overall has just been impressing me, and they have a lot of depth. They have a lot of talent. And in a competitive West, the fact that they are 9-2, it should not be taken lightly. Do I think they're a championship contender yet? No. But They are making some noise, and they are opening people's eyes, including my own. So in the next week, the next 2 weeks, especially in this in-season tournament, look out for the Golden State Warriors. See what they do. Are they going to continue this blazing start that they had? Because I will say it again, in a Western Conference where, I don't know, like 11 of the teams are 500 or better, it's not a coincidence that the Warriors are 9-2. This team has played like a unit. Everyone is contributing. Steve Kerr is doing an amazing job. His new coaching staff, of course, they lost a lot of guys, is doing a great job. And they look good. They look very, very good, and they look like a tough team to beat, especially since they're shooting the ball just like they did in, I don't know, a season like 2022, where they won the championship and they weren't really talked about as much as maybe some of the other teams. But 2022 is really, this team reminds me a lot about them. No joke. So let's look out for Golden State in these next couple of weeks. And the Mavericks, of course, they've got to figure something out. They really do, because there's no excuses. Just like the Timberwolves, they made the conference finals 5-7. It's a little bit of a concern. Yes, the Western Conference is great, but you have Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson. Figure it out. Figure it out. I mean, this has really been the pattern for Dallas. 2022, they made the conference finals. 2023, they didn't even make the play-in. 2024, they made the conference finals. Now this 24-25 season, are they not going to make the play-in again? Obviously, I don't think that's going to be the case, but the Mavericks, they have to find ways to get better on the defensive end, because once again, their defensive struggles had shine. And what was the one thing that really stood out about the Mavericks? It was their defensive efforts. I mean, they're giving up 120 points per game. They're giving up 134 to the Indiana Pacers. It has not been pretty for the Dallas Mavericks, and they have lost a lot of close games. They have not won in the clutch. They had a really bad loss last night to the Utah Jazz. They have not been doing good in the clutch, and we know how good Luka Doncic, how good Kyrie Irving, and even how good Klay Thompson are in the clutch. It's not been pretty for Dallas down the stretch. And they're going to have to win some of those close games, because in the NBA, there's going to be a lot of those, especially in the regular season. And those are what really determine whether you're a 3 seed or whether you're a play-in team. So Dallas is going to have to get them moving before they get in a bigger hole, because for how good this Western Conference is, every game matters, and there is no slacking off. But I want to transition now to the Philadelphia 76ers, because just like the Dallas Mavericks, they are struggling. And they are struggling worse, like dramatically worse than the Dallas Mavericks. And that's saying something, because the Philadelphia 76ers are 2-9. Crickets, that's right. 2-9. I mean, it's shocking. It's not even surprising. It's mind-blowing. I don't care whether Paul George or Joel Embiid was out. I really don't. The fact that this team, with this roster that was built to win a championship, has the perfect role players, made some great additions in Caleb Martin, Yuba Swale, Andre Drummond, and brought back some key players such as Kyle Lowry, Kelly Oubre. The fact that they're 2-9, I mean, it's unreal. And Paul George came back for the Phoenix Suns game, which they lost by 2. And Paul George right now is a combined 1-4 with this team. I know Joel Embiid's been out, but Philly is really digging themselves in a deep hole here at 2-9. 7 games under the 500. And it's a problem. It's definitely a problem, because their only wins are against the Pacers in an overtime game where Tyrese Maxey absolutely went off, and against the Charlotte Hornets at home where they needed a rookie to score 27 points to get the win, and Jared McCain. And props to Jared McCain, because without him, they wouldn't even be in these basketball games, because Jared McCain has been elite scoring the ball. And so far, it's looked like a great pick for the 76ers. And without him, I don't know where they would be right now. I mean, they probably have the same record. They might even be 1-10, but they wouldn't be in these games. The 76ers have lost every single game this season, except for the Phoenix Suns game where they lost by 2, by more than double digits. By more than double digits. They've lost every game by 10 or more, except for the Phoenix Suns game. That should tell you something. Something's up. Something is up in Philadelphia. And the pressure is rising because you look at the 3 seed right now, the Magic, who are 7-6. Not that impressive, but you're already 4 games behind them. That's a big hole. That's a big hole in the Eastern Conference where last year a 4 through 8 seed was decided by 2 games. Philly's going to have to start picking up some wins and picking up some wins fast. And there's really a lot of holes in their schedule. You look at it, you've got at Orlando, at Miami, which I don't know if you're going to be favorites in either of those games. At Memphis is a tough one. I mean, the wins have to come soon for the 76ers because Paul George isn't doing that great. 17.2 points per game in the 5 games he's been playing. I mentioned 1 and 4 with him on the court. Embiid just came back, and there's going to be an adjustment period for Joel Embiid. I don't care how good you are. No matter who you are, there's always going to be an adjustment period for getting back on the court. Remember, this is Joel Embiid's first game since April, since early April in the NBA. Of course, he played for Team USA, but there is going to be an adjustment period. It's going to take time for Joel Embiid to get acclimated to this new team. So it's going to be a rough time, not only now, but ahead for the 76ers. And Tyrese Maxey is currently out with a hamstring strain. I mean, it's always something with the 76ers. And the fact that right now that it's not even Paul George or Joel Embiid that's injured, and it's Tyrese Maxey, I mean, damn. What else can I say other than that? For the 76ers team that cannot get past the second round, has built the best roster around Joel Embiid, I think, in ever. Even better than that 2019 roster with Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, and Ben Simmons at his prime. And you're 2-9, injury prone, and there's just not a lot of positives to take away other than the rookie Jared McCain keeping you in some of these games. And Joel Embiid and Paul George are not playing in back-to-backs. I mean, this 76ers organization is a travesty. I said it. It's a travesty because it feels like every single time they get close, every single time they're about to climb the mountain, get over that hump of getting past the second round, get over that hump of having little to no injuries in the regular season. They just find a way to really screw it up. And of course, injuries, not their fault. But when it happens every year, it opens your eye a little bit to, is the training staff doing their job? Are the players doing their job to keep themselves healthy? It really raises that question. And Philly's going to be in this tough spot now where in the next 2 weeks, you better start winning more than you lose. Because even if you win and go 500, it's not good enough. And if you go under 500, well, oh boy, you're in a heap of trouble, as they say. Joel Embiid better find a way to be on the court. It's not time to sit out in back-to-backs. I know what he said. It's not time for Paul George to sit out in back-to-backs either. It's time for desperation. Desperate times call for desperate measures. You are 7 games under 500 through your first 9. It's desperation time. You can't sit out Paul George and Joel Embiid in the back-to-back against a 13-0 Cleveland Cavaliers team that's coming in, and you're actually competitive against them. You can't. You just can't do it. Philly's going to have to figure out a way where they can manage the injuries while Embiid and Paul George play as much as possible. Because I thought they could somehow get away with it in the regular season, but I was wrong because this Philadelphia 76ers team, when you give them hope, when you give me hope, the media hope, when you give fans hope, they just kick it, punt it, throw it in the ocean, and it never returns until it does, and then it doesn't return again. This organization is dysfunctional, and there is seriously something wrong with Joel Embiid for not playing on the court. I mean, I said it. What's said is what's done. And another team that's dealing with a lot of injuries is the New Orleans Pelicans, as this is a team that I could feel a little bit worse for than the Philadelphia 76ers. And of course, it's not pretty because the Pelicans, of course, have had many injury issues in the past as well. And the Pelicans are currently sitting as the worst team in the Western Conference, tied with the Utah Jazz at 3-9. And they have had a load of injuries to deal with. And I will read them down the list. DeJounte Murray has a hand injury, 4 to 6 weeks. CJ McCollum, a right abductor strain, 2 to 3 weeks. Herbert Jones, a right shoulder strain, 2 to 4 weeks. Jordan Hawkins, a lower back strain, 1 to 2 weeks. Zion Williamson, a left hamstring strain, is out indefinitely. And Jose Alvarado, a left hamstring strain, is out for 6 weeks. I mean, you've got 4 of your starters in DeJounte, CJ McCollum, Herbert Jones, and Zion. You've got 2 key pieces off your bench in Jose Alvarado and Jordan Hawkins. You just had Trey Murphy come back into the lineup. I mean, this Pelicans team is absolutely dismantled right now with injuries. And this, I mean, it sucks. It sucks they have the injury woe because when they traded for DeJounte Murray, I was like, okay, this Pelicans team is going to be good. You saw when Zion was healthy how good this team can really be. You saw them compete with the Lakers in the play-in tournament before he got injured. You saw them compete all season long. And then you add a guy like DeJounte Murray putting up 22 points per game with the Atlanta Hawks, adding to the offense, adding to the backcourt for defensive purposes, and you're not looking at that roster like, hey, this team's got 4 all-star caliber players. This is a very good basketball team. And yet, here we are. They're all injured, and they're sitting at 3-9, tied for the worst record in the Western Conference, 3rd worst record in the NBA. I mean, what can you say? I mean, the other injuries, except for Zion's, I mean, it sucks. It sucks to suck. I mean, you have the injury bug this year. And it's just really bad, especially for a team that traded assets to get DeJounte Murray, traded assets to contend in a Western Conference that is very loaded. You want to see how this team works together. And you didn't really get that opportunity so far this season. But the Zion Williamson injury, I mean, it's just another injury. I mean, it's just like Joel Embiid. When is it going to stop? I mean, it's another indefinite injury. I mean, what is this one, a left hamstring strain? I mean, it's just something else with Zion Williamson, just like Joel Embiid. It's always something. And the key to success for this Pelicans team, it's Zion Williamson. Why did they draft him at the number 1 pick to replace Anthony Davis, who they just traded to the Lakers? Because he had the potential to be an Anthony Davis, to be a rim protector, to be someone who you couldn't stop when he's posting up someone, a rim attacker, someone who can handle the ball as well, get to the free throw line. Zion could do it all on offense and was very elite defensively. And you just don't see him on the court. You can't see him on the court. They should have traded him when they had the chance. Because enough is enough. Zion Williamson is ending up like Joel Embiid. And Joel Embiid is really ending up like Kawhi Leonard, except the difference between Kawhi Leonard and Joel Embiid and Zion Williamson is at least Kawhi Leonard won 2 titles. Those two have not even gotten to the conference finals, let alone for Zion Williamson, the 2nd round of the playoffs. Zion needs to find a way to be durable because the Pelicans really revolve around him. I mean, they should have traded him. Like, if you know Zion's not going to play, what are you supposed to do? I mean, you can't build this team around someone who's not going to be on the basketball court. That simple. The Pelicans have been a disaster this season. They were 16.5-point underdogs against the Oklahoma City Thunder the other night. And you know what happened? The Thunder covered. They got swept last year. They had the whole Brandon Ingram situation. And what's funny is the only superstar that's healthy right now is Brandon Ingram for the New Orleans Pelicans. I don't mean superstar, but star. You know what I mean. And the Pelicans right now are relying on a guy like Brandon Boston Jr. to really pick up the slack. A guy like Trey Murphy, who's really more of a defender than a scorer, to score 20 points per game. A rookie in Uvis Messi to start at center and be the big body for them. New Orleans is just really dismantled right now. And there's always that team that has the injury bug. And so far this season, it's been the Pelicans. But I really thought that this team was going to do something, as in make a run, because I really believed with CJ McCollum, who is a near all-star every single year, probably one of the best players of all time to not become an all-star. Brandon Ingram, who has been an all-star before. DeJounte Murray, who has been close to an all-star appearance. With Zion, that's a championship team. And the Pelicans gave a lot up. And now you're sitting here 3-9, and what are you supposed to do? Tank the rest of the year? Capture the flag for a first-round pick that you don't have because you traded it? I just have no words for these teams, because you put all your marbles in for one guy, one franchise player, and he just becomes injured every single season, and it sucks to suck. You lost the lottery. You really did lose the lottery. And the Pelicans, I don't know what to say. I mean, could they trade Zion at the trade deadline? Absolutely, if this season's not going that well, and I would encourage them to. If they continue to stay at this pace at 3-9, might as well. Why not? Get some assets. Build around someone else, because he's just not staying healthy on the court. The other injuries, CJ McCollum, he never gets injured. DeJounte Murray, he doesn't really get injured either. So it sucks to suck. Jose Alvarado, we know how tough, how gritty he is. He doesn't get injured a lot. But Zion, there's no excuse. And we know Memphis had the injury bug last year, and maybe this year it's going to be the Pelicans. But it's just once again with Zion just not being on the court, not being there for the Pelicans. But I want to talk about some more positive things other than the 76ers and New Orleans Pelicans injury issues. Let's talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers for the second straight episode, because they absolutely deserve to be talked about, because the Cavaliers are making history. 13-0, tied for the fifth fastest and best start in the NBA's history at 13-0. And they have 2 games. Their next 2 games are winnable. Their next 2 games are, if I'm not mistaken, against the Chicago Bulls tonight in the in-season tournament and the Charlotte Hornets. And then they go to Boston on the 19th in a clash that will probably be remembered as, oh, Cleveland, yeah, they're not really ready for the big moment. But if they beat Boston, oh, Cleveland's here to contend. This is not some phony run. For how good Cleveland has been to start this season, I'm going to say it straight up. It means nothing, because the past years, they've been a first or second round exit in the playoff. They really haven't shown anything to why they can contend. But they go into Boston at 15-0, and they go in there and beat the defending champs, a team that they lost 2-5 in the postseason. Yes, I know they had injuries. You go in there and beat the Celtics. All of that changes. Forget this is the fakest 13-0, 15-0 run I've ever seen. Oh, shoot, the Cavs are contenders. They are one of the best, if not the best team in the NBA. I mean, this whole reputation of their undefeated record comes down to the Celtics game. That's it. That's really it. Can you go into Boston and beat the Celtics? The rest of it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. They play Boston again at home, but that doesn't really matter. What the rest of the NBA wants to see, what the media, what the fans want to see, they want to see Cleveland with their undefeated record, the crowd at TD Garden going crazy, and go in there and beat the Celtics. That's what they want to see. But you got to give a lot of credit where credit is due to the Cleveland Cavaliers, because they're coming off that semifinals appearance, of course, injury-riddled, losing to the Boston Celtics, and they fired J.B. Bickerstaff, which I didn't think was pretty fair for J.B. Bickerstaff, someone who brought the Cavs to their first second-round appearance since LeBron James was on the basketball team. And you decide to fire him. Of course, he's doing amazing things in Detroit right now, and you decide to hire Kenny Atkinson, which, okay, Kenny Atkinson was decent with the Brooklyn Nets, really maximized that roster. Let's see what he can do with the Cavaliers. Well, he is maximizing this roster to its fullest potential right now at 13-0. And you've got to give credit to the Cleveland Cavaliers right now. And you got to give credit to not only Kenny Atkinson, but you got to give credit to that core four. And the core four of Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jared Allen, and Evan Mobley. And Cleveland has had a plus 7.9 net rating entering Monday night with that core four on the court together. And they are also dominating as duos, as Atkinson really has tried to link Jared Allen with Darius Garland when Mitchell and Mobley are out, and vice versa, Mitchell and Mobley on the court together when Darius Garland and Jared Allen are out. He's really trying to go with this duo effect more than trying to just try to mash them all together, which I would say I agree with, because they just didn't really fit all together on the court together. Of course, gladly, will they be all on the court in crunch time when the game really matters? Obviously. But for the bulk of the game, for those second quarter, third quarter minutes where nobody really pays attention to, I think Kenny Atkinson's doing the right thing by really separating them, because it's opening up the floor now for shooters. It's not clogging the paint. It's opening up the wing where you can only have one and one ball handler. You have the other guys setting screens, moving off the ball, and getting ready to catch and shoot. You have one guy in the post, and you don't really need to stretch out the big man, or you can stretch out the entire floor by bringing that one big man out to the perimeter. So I think this new approach that Kenny Atkinson has done, where he's just really playing the duos with Mitchell and Mobley and Garland playing with Jared Allen, I think it has been a perfect start to the season. Mitchell and Mobley has had a plus 13.9 net rating, and Garland and Allen have a plus 8.4 net rating. So it's been something that's been a positive for the Cleveland Cavaliers so far, and something that I really took notice to was their win against the Golden State Warriors, because the score says 26, but it was 40-something. Golden State got destroyed by the Cleveland Cavaliers, a team that we just mentioned a couple of minutes ago is 9-2. And one of those losses are by blowout fashion to the Cleveland Cavaliers. But again, I will say it. None of it matters. The 15-0, it won't matter, because yes, they are going to beat the Chicago Bulls and the Charlotte Hornets. I am 100% confident on that. The 15-0 won't matter unless they beat Boston at the Garden. That's going to be the game. I am definitely going to be watching that game. I hope all of you watch that game as well, because it's going to be interesting to see, okay, is Cleveland legit, or are they just pretenders here going 15-0 and they're going to lose in the second round like they normally do? We will see. That will be the game to watch this week. And it is an in-season tournament game, by the way, which we are going to start previewing right now, that Cleveland Cavaliers and Boston Celtics in-season tournament game. But we will start with the Friday games, and we will transition to the Tuesday games, which include the Cleveland Cavaliers undefeated at the Boston Celtics. And there are a lot of in-season tournament games to get into. Of course, most teams are really getting into their first game of the in-season tournament, other than especially the Western Conference teams. But we will start with the Eastern Conference teams, and we'll go group by group here to see the games. Starting with East Group A, we have the Philadelphia 76ers at the Orlando Magic. The 76ers, of course, lost to the New York Knicks in their first in-season tournament game, as we mentioned to start this show. And they go up against the Orlando Magic, who won their first in-season tournament game in convincing fashion against the Charlotte Hornets. It looks like Joel Embiid and Paul George will be active for this game tonight, but Tyrese Maxey will be out for the Magic. We know Banchero continues to remain out of action. It's going to be an interesting one, because Orlando can really set up that battle with the New York Knicks here at home. Not at home, at the Garden. Sorry, that game will be at Madison Square Garden to really determine the group if the Orlando Magic win here. But if they don't, it really opens up the door for, hey, maybe Philly can become a wild card team, get some momentum going as a 2-9 team, and start piling up some wins through the in-season tournament, getting some momentum in games that matter a little bit more than most regular season games. That is something where teams have really found their niche, really found ways to pick up momentum, like the Indiana Pacers did last year, like the Los Angeles Lakers did last year. They really found their niche. They really picked up a lot of momentum through the in-season tournament and transition that to the back half of the regular season. Maybe more the Pacers than the Lakers, but you get the point. The in-season tournament can do a lot of things for a team. And I think the 76ers really need to win that one. And I think the 76ers will win that game against the Orlando Magic, upsetting them in Orlando at the Kia Center. The next game is the New York Knicks hosting the New Brooklyn Nets, a battle of the Empire State. This one's pretty clear and obvious. Obviously, the Nets have gotten off to a little bit of a surprising start here with Jordy Fernandez as the head coach. The Brooklyn Nets are 5-7. They're not doing half that bad out there for a team that I thought was going to be the worst team, second worst team, in the Eastern Conference. And I'm going to take the Knicks because they are at home. They're going to need the win. They're 5-6. They just had a disappointing home loss to the Chicago Bulls after almost coming back from 20 down, and then Chicago hit a game-winning three-point shot. But the Knicks are going to win this one, go 2-0, and have firm control of their group in the in-season tournament. And then the last game, which will be on a Tuesday, the Charlotte Hornets at the Brooklyn Nets, probably an elimination game for both of those teams. And I'm going to take the Brooklyn Nets in that one. Not really one to discuss majorly, but it is a game out there. You never know if the Brooklyn Nets if they upset the Knicks, beat the Hornets, they're 2-0. So let's see how the Nets do against the Knicks before we make a lot of assumptions about their chances in East Group A. East Group B, there are only 2 games, and they will be both played tonight. It will be the Miami Heat, who lost their in-season tournament game to the Detroit Pistons, playing at Indiana, which to me is an elimination game for Miami. Obviously, Indiana will still have an opportunity if they lose, if they beat Milwaukee, but that probably won't happen. Detroit here is playing the Toronto Raptors, but we'll start with the Heat and Pacers game. As I mentioned, Miami, no Jimmy Butler tonight. He has been already ruled out. Indiana also struggling a little bit to start the season. I'm going to take the Indiana Pacers in this in-season tournament game. Miami's just been struggling a little bit here. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Miami wins, especially considering the circumstances, as we discussed earlier in this podcast, to why they ended up losing against the Detroit Pistons. But at the end of the day, Indiana is at home. Jimmy Butler will not be playing. And, Pacers have something with the in-season tournament as they try to defend their Emirates NBA Cup title. So I'm going to take the Pacers there. Now, the Pistons at the Toronto Raptors. The Pistons, of course, 1-0. If they can beat the Toronto Raptors, things can get a little bit interesting in East Group B, especially with a matchup against the Milwaukee Bucks. And I think the Pistons are going to beat the Raptors. The Raptors have really struggled this season. I really do like, as I mentioned earlier, what the Pistons have done so far this season. I think JB Bickerstaff has done an amazing job with that roster. I think Cade Cunningham's having a great season. The rest of the roster's really following suit. They have a decent roster, people. People should be paying more attention to the Detroit Pistons and what they're doing. And maybe it can start with an in-season tournament run, as if they beat the Raptors, could set up an interesting clash with both the Indiana Pacers and the Milwaukee Bucks. But they do have to take care of business tonight against Toronto, and I think they will. So that's all for East Group B. Milwaukee has the next 2 in-season tournament days off. East Group C, we have 3 contests, 2 tonight and 1 on next Tuesday. First, the Washington Wizards play at the 1-0 Atlanta Hawks. And, of course, the Atlanta Hawks are coming off the upset win against the Boston Celtics in TD Garden. And if the Hawks win this, hey, they're 2-0. They set up a clash against the Cleveland Cavaliers that could be very interesting and very intriguing for that matter. And the Cleveland Cavaliers are hosting the Chicago Bulls as the second game on Friday night, which is tonight. I'm going to take the Atlanta Hawks against the Wizards, and I'm going to take, as I mentioned, the Cleveland Cavaliers against the Chicago Bulls tonight in the in-season tournament matchups. The Hawks, hey, you never know, could make a run in the in-season tournament. We will see. The Hawks currently right now, they are at 5-7, so we'll see if they can make some noise in an Eastern Conference that is struggling a lot. And then the game on Tuesday, which is the game that I talked about, the big one. The Cleveland Cavaliers at the Boston Celtics. Boston, it's an elimination game. You lose this, you're done. But if Boston wins this, they have a path to win the group if Cleveland, of course, takes care of business against the Atlanta Hawks. The Cleveland Cavaliers, This will be a statement game for them. It really will be. Because I think they're going to come in 15-0. And Boston may be 10-3, 11-3. I don't know how many games they have before Tuesday. But it will be one that everyone's going to watch. And this game will determine the group. And I'm going to take the Boston Celtics because at some point the Cavaliers are going to lose, right? Obviously, Cleveland could completely shock the world and go 16-0 and beat the Celtics. But for right now, it's very hard to do that. We haven't seen that. Only once we have seen that. We have seen that with the Golden State Warriors, who obviously started 24-0 before losing to the Milwaukee Bucks in Game 25. But the Cavaliers can be the second team ever to start off 16-0 or better if they win the next two and beat Boston and in TD Garden. But I'm going to pick the Celtics in that one because eventually Cleveland's got to lose sometime, right? And if the Celtics are fully healthy, obviously with the exclusion of Kristaps Porzingis, I will take the Boston Celtics in that matchup. Now for the transition to the Western Conference, not a lot of Western Conference teams played, so this will most likely be their first game in the in-season tournament, for the exception of a couple of teams. But West Group A only has two matchups, which will occur both tonight. The Clippers will be taking on the Rockets in Houston, and the Timberwolves will be taking on the Kings in Sacramento. But let's start with the first game here with the Clippers and the Rockets. The Clippers and the Rockets have relatively gotten off to some decent starts. The Rockets 8-4, doing very good under Ime Udoka in year 2, and the Clippers, for their injury bugs, have had some decent wins, and they're 6-6 right now. And this game's at Houston, and I'm going to take the Houston Rockets to beat the Clippers in a game where could really set up an interesting finish because right now Portland 1-0 in this group, Minnesota 0-1, obviously with the big upset there, but now this group could potentially come down to Houston, the Clippers, and the Kings. So this one could really be huge in determining who wins the group. And I'm going to take the Houston Rockets at home. The Timberwolves are playing the Sacramento Kings tonight in what is an elimination game for the Timberwolves. You lose this one, if you're Minnesota, you're out. You're done. Questions will be raised about you at 6-7. You win this, of course. Now comes the scenario of, okay, you can still win this group. You can get a wild card position. I'm going to take the Timberwolves because I feel like they really need this win. They need it more than Sacramento. It's on the road. It's in hostile territory. Sacramento has had a 7-5 start. Not that bad, but Minnesota at 6-6, they really need a win. They've had some ugly losses, the one against Miami and the one against Portland. They're going to need a statement win. And in an in-season tournament game on the road where they're facing elimination in group play, I think it's one of those where Anthony Edwards is going to say, you know what beep it, and we got to win this game. And I think Minnesota is going to win that game right there, improving to 1-1 in the in-season tournament. But if the Kings do win that game, I would probably put them now as my favorites to win that group. West Group B, we have 4 contests for you, 2 happening tonight, 2 happening Tuesday. We'll start with the games happening tonight. The Lakers and the Spurs both play their first NBA Cup game as they look to get off to strong starts. Of course, the San Antonio Spurs are missing a key piece, and that is Greg Popovich. Of course, he suffered a stroke on November 2nd, and he is out indefinitely. Prayers up to Greg Popovich. The reports are he will return soon, but of course, Greg Popovich, the longest tenured head coach in the NBA, a 5-time NBA champion, a legend to the game of basketball. We hope he feels better out there and hopes he can return to the sideline soon. But for the actual game, it's a big one. I mean, to me, it's an elimination game because you look at the other teams in your group with the Phoenix Suns and the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's really a must-win for the Lakers or the Spurs to really contend in this group, and it's at San Antonio. But I'm going to take the Lakers, JJ Redick, and LeBron and the crew because the Lakers haven't really played good in their last couple of games. I mean, they're 7-4. They've won 3 straight, but it hasn't looked pretty. I want to see a statement win out of the Lakers, and I think it can happen tonight against the San Antonio Spurs. So I'm going to take the Lakers in that spot. Second game, a huge one for the group. The Suns going into Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City, of course, devastating injury to Chet Holmgren. He will be out for 10 weeks. Phoenix, of course, Kevin Durant out for a few weeks as well. So both teams a little bit injured here. But the Thunder really, I think, are in an interesting position because I think they're a good basketball team. But I did pick in the preseason for the Suns to win this group, and I'm going to stick by it. So I think the Thunder are the better team, and they should win tonight. But I'm not going to go against my pick. And I didn't consider the fact that Kevin Durant was going to be out. But I'm still going to take the Phoenix Suns anyway because I had them winning the group. And if the Suns go 2-0, it will be their group to lose as they play the Lakers and the Spurs. If they can beat the Thunder, those will be the two remaining teams for them. Now, the games on Tuesday, the Thunder will play the Spurs. Now, if the Thunder can win that game, I think they can win the Spurs, beat the San Antonio Spurs. I don't think one has any effect on the outcome, but if they win the first one and they win, I think they would win the second one and they could go 2-0. If they don't, obviously, that game becomes an elimination game for them. And what we won't see, unfortunately, is a Chet Holmgren versus Victor Wembanyama classic matchup like we saw last season, because as I mentioned a couple of seconds ago, Chet Holmgren is out with an injury for 10 plus weeks. But it could be an elimination game for both of those teams. So it could really matter. And in that spot, I will probably take the Oklahoma City Thunder. And the last game, the Utah Jazz at the Lakers. The Jazz really struggling to start this season. So I'm going to take the Lakers there. So if the Lakers can beat the Spurs, they should probably start this group 2-0, setting up what would be an intriguing matchup against the Phoenix Suns as that would be their third time playing already this season. Now let's go to West Group C, where there's been one game, the Warriors and the Dallas Mavericks. The Warriors defeating the Dallas Mavericks there. But the first game here, which will happen tonight, is the Denver Nuggets at the Pelicans. Pelicans injury deprived here. As we mentioned earlier, the Denver Nuggets have been playing better as of recently. And for those reasons, I'm going to be taking the Denver Nuggets, who are 7-3 currently, to beat the New Orleans Pelicans to start off 1-0 in group play. Now the Grizzlies go to Golden State. What is a classic rivalry? Obviously, the Grizzlies have been pretty decent to start off this season at 7-5, have been a lot healthier, but the Warriors are just playing a lot better right now. And I think the Warriors are going to win, and they are going to go 9-2 to 10-2 to start off the season. The Warriors might be one of the only teams to be in double digits, along with the Thunder and the Cleveland Cavaliers right here and right now. And the games on Friday, those are the games on Friday. The Nuggets at Pelicans, Grizzlies at Warriors. The games on Tuesday will be the Nuggets once again playing at Memphis and the Pelicans at Dallas. I'm going to take the Mavericks against the Pelicans because the Pelicans are completely injury deprived, and the Mavericks are going to need that win because it is an elimination game for the Dallas Mavericks in group play, especially since they lost against the Golden State Warriors in game one of that Western Conference Group C. And the Nuggets and Grizzlies, I am going to take the Denver Nuggets to beat the Grizzlies, setting them up 2-0, which could set up a very intriguing matchup against the Golden State Warriors. And that is it for today's episode. We previewed and recapped the in-season tournament. We talked about a lot of injuries, a lot of things going around the world of the NBA today. And please let me know if you have anything you would like to add to our discussion, anything you'd like to say. Just give me a DM on my Instagram at tank_your_shot_podcast_ and tell me how you would have taken your shots on my takes. That's all my shots for the week. I will see you next Friday as we continue on with the NBA in-season tournament.